to join us to discuss this judgment is the gender-critical campaigner Connie Shaw, who was suspended from Leeds Student Radio due to her gender-critical views. Connie, good morning to you. I can see from the smile on your face, you're very happy, and congratulations.
Thank you, although it's not really me that should be. It's for Women Scotland who have done this, and like Susan Smith was just saying, all the women across the country who have for many years campaigned for this legal right to be able to say that women should be able to have single-sex spaces and exclude all men, no matter how they identify, from their spaces. I mean, I don't really have much to say other than flipping get in. And yeah, I just can't stop smiling. It's just so emotional and such a momentous day for women's rights in this country, and hopefully will send shockwaves around other common law countries such as Australia, which are having real issues with women's rights there at the moment too. So hopefully this will have an effect on the whole world.
Connie, you were suspended, as we mentioned, from Leeds Student Radio. What did you say that was deemed so controversial?
Well, I wasn't actually told exactly what it was that I had said that resulted in my permanent removal from my committee position. But the Free Speech Union and I believe it was to do with my gender-critical views. And this whole case is particularly emotional for me because Susan Smith was the first gender-critical... Susan Smith, who's one of the directors for Women Scotland, who just gave an interview after the ruling then.
Yeah.
She was one of the first, I think the first gender-critical feminist that I ever spoke to, and realised that actually I did think this was a huge issue. And me and my 3 other presenters on Politics Hour on Leeds Student Radio, almost exactly this time last year, interviewed her on Leeds Student Radio, and that episode can still be listened to on SoundCloud, and it is the most listened to episode on the Leeds Student Radio SoundCloud, which I feel very smug about. And now we've won.
And what were you accused of being?
Turf.
When I was suspended on the basis that essentially I was a health and safety risk to other members, that I hadn't acted in a selfless way, and that I brought LSR into disrepute.
And therefore, the idea is that you... I'm interested in who had made the complaint then. Is there some very vocal trans activists within your university at Leeds, within the student union, who made it their work to get you cancelled?
Well, I will never know who it was who made the complaint, because
yeah,
I will never be told. But I would say that it's not that there are certain trans activists within the student union, but gender ideology is so embedded within university culture that it was just bound to happen. I wasn't surprised at all when it did happen, which is why I'd already purchased my Free Speech Union membership, basically in preparation, because I knew that what I was saying, even though what I was saying wasn't being broadcast on Leeds Student Radio, it was my own personal podcast and my own Substack and social media, I knew that I could cause people some upset, and I did. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. But, I don't know who made the complaint, and I doubt I'll ever know.
Connie, would you be keen to go back onto Leeds Student Radio?
Well, not particularly. I mean...
Go on.
Come to LBC if you can.
I mean, maybe
LBC? You mean GB News? How dare you, Stephen Pound?
I mean,
No, they take people from the student radio.
Why not go back on? To have your say. Why not go back on and have your say? You've been vindicated, after all, by this court ruling.
Well, not necessarily, because they didn't overturn my appeal. When I appealed the decision, it wasn't overturned. But I think, they said that if I wanted to return and run again for committee, I'd have to write an apology to the station.
Connie. Well, you know what?
Do that.
Their loss is Substack, clearly, and GB News' gain. We want you here on our panel talking such common sense, because the wheel is turning on this issue. And you have played a part in this. I know you said you aren't involved in the court case, but anybody who stuck their neck out, any woman who swam against the tide should be celebrating this morning. So good for you.
If somebody has gone for the full reassignment surgery, they would argue, I am now a woman. Why are they wrong, Sharon?
But to get a gender recognition certificate, you don't have to do that. And that is the problem. That's it in a nutshell.
And isn't it, Sharon, that you have to live as the opposite sex for a certain amount of months? But it's incredible. 2 years now. So you have to say that you've lived
You have to say that you've lived as a woman. What is living as a woman? I mean, is it the fact that you put a skirt on? Is that what makes you a woman? Or that you put your makeup on, or you grow your hair? Or what is it that makes you a woman? Living as a woman, to me, I find extraordinary. And that is, in a sentence, to me, it's very difficult to get my head around. It's 2 years of saying you live as a woman. It's over 18. It's a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And it's £6. And that's it.
And then you walk away with your certificate. And the implications of that then is that, say, for instance, you want to go to a women's refuge. I'm thinking of where we would find particularly vulnerable women that may not want to be around somebody that was born a male. That would allow you to have access to that. Now, what we're seeing today in the Supreme Court is if the idea that a gender recognition certificate is recognised to that degree in law, then those people will therefore be able to access those spaces. If today this is overturned as a concept or is ruled not to be legitimate, then those spaces become once again safe for biologically born women.
For biological females.
Yeah.
The same with sport. In the Equality Act, there's section 195, and that says that sport can be segregated by sex. Well, if we change the definition of sex, then we can no longer segregate sport by sex. So it will remove all protections that women have to safe spaces or fair sport or even to just a biological reality, basically.
Right, so judgment's just come in. Obviously, it's very loud outside the Supreme Court here. All the campaigners coming out, celebrating, chanting women's rights as human rights. I've got the judgment, it's very thick and there's lots to get through, but it's worth reflecting on how significant this moment is. So Lord Hodge, you may have heard before the break, saying the court is well aware of the strength of feeling on all sides, which lies behind this appeal. The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms women and sex in the Equality Act. The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms women and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to biological women and biological sex. This has been going on since 2018, a massive moment, a huge loss for the Scottish government, of course, and hugely significant going forward for the legal understanding of sex as it pertains to law. And of course, you can hear that strength of feeling right now behind me.
Hey, good morning. This is such a huge day for women across Scotland and indeed people right across the UK. Now, I'm joined by Ash Regan, ALBA leader of the Scottish Parliament. ALBA, Ash, this is a huge day for you. You've been in this fight for a long time.
Yeah, we're absolutely delighted. So 4 Women in Scotland have won their court case today at the Supreme Court to find a final definition on what is a woman. So the biological definition of woman is what has been upheld by the court, which is obviously a victory for women right across Scotland, but it's also a victory for common sense. Now, it should never have come to this. It should never have taken 3 ordinary Scottish mums to fight the Scottish Government all the way to the Supreme Court to get an answer on this. And unfortunately, the Scottish Government has been very much exposed now. They've been humiliated in court, and they must now roll back this ideology right in Scotland.
Now, you were listening right there to the very end. There was talk of sport, there was talk of women's spaces, there was talk of support groups, and of course the law. What is some of the nitty-gritty that you think are some of the biggest wins for this group today?
Well, this has been affecting women, not just in Scotland, obviously across the world we're having similar issues, but in the UK it was affecting women in terms of the issues you've described. So in terms of participation in sport, where inclusion means that people who are not women were being included in the female category, which obviously isn't fair for women. We've got examples of women being asked to get changed, to be in a position where, they're obviously vulnerable when men are allowed in the changing rooms. We've had problems maintaining single-sex spaces. We have violent male offenders in the women's prison estate. This has to stop now. We have to draw a line under this now, and we have to move on. And the Scottish Government must take this very seriously. There can be no more prevarication. They must roll this back through the public sector. And we now all know that a woman is an adult human female and it has a biological definition.
Now, there's a party going on next door. I don't know if you can tell. I don't want to keep you any longer, but very, very quickly, how is the Scottish Government feeling right now?
I have no idea how they might be feeling. To be honest, I haven't got a lot of sympathy for them. They were warned repeatedly by myself and by many other women that this did interfere with the Equality Act, that it created a hierarchy of rights, and it was the wrong thing to do. They didn't listen. They've persisted and persisted and persisted. In fact, I I told very senior members of the government at the end of last year that they should drop this court case, and they didn't do it. So they only have themselves to blame for this now, but I hope they take this seriously. They recognise they've been roundly beaten, that their magical thinking that is dangerous for women is now finished, and they need to roll back this ideology.
Ash Regan, thank you so much for taking some time. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know not to keep a Scottish person from a good party. And that was Ash Regan here at the watch party for Women Scotland in Edinburgh. This is obviously a huge day for women right across the country who have been in this fight for a very long time.